From the world of John Wick, Ballerina is the fifth movie in the John Wick franchise. It stars Ana de Armas as the proverbial ballerina, but for all intents and purposes, she's John Wick. I'll be spoiling the plot to discuss my thoughts, so leave now if that's not what you want, but honestly, at this point, if you've seen one Wick movie, you've seen them all. Ballerina officially gave me John Wick fatigue. Truthfully, I was tired after the fourth movie, which I also thought was horrible, but this one fried what little brain cells I have left and confirmed that these movies no longer offer anything of value. I feel the first three movies build well off one another in regards to innovative choreography and action set pieces, but ironically enough, that peaked with Parabellum, and as the name implied, it's only been downhill from here. I will start off with a short list of compliments before summarizing the plot, and then I'll get into the weeds about why I'm tearing my ticket with Wick and permanently going Excommunicado. Ballerina succeeds in faithfully and proudly honoring the John Wick franchise. The aesthetics are on point, adding a visually distinct feel to each and every scene, even outside of the action, and the soundtrack follows suit, contributing the same level of oomph and badassery to each action scene that sure distract you from realizing this is all the same shit you've seen a million times before. Ana is a pleasure to watch as the lead, but only in so much that she's a beautiful woman. I don't think it's controversial to say that Eve lacks the charisma needed from the protagonist of such a storied franchise, and unfortunately, they don't spotlight her sex appeal to compensate for this. She's essentially just a gender-swapped John Wick instead of a fully realized femme fatale. Not a girl boss, but not distinctly feminine either. Keanu Reeves, Ian McShane, and Lance Reddick all make small appearances as well, and it's nice to see them again. And that's it. Faithful aesthetics, good soundtrack, and fun cameos. That's all I liked. So now let's talk about the abysmal plot. Spoilers from here on out. The movie opens with Eve and her dad unknowingly enjoying their final moments together. Eve mentions not remembering her sister, which means she's going to show up later in the movie. Then they go inside so the first bland action scene can happen. Some guys come out of the water with crossbows and shoot one security guy too many times before proceeding inside. Eve's dad uncreatively employs some smoke grenades, which don't do much other than create an aesthetic to prime your brain to know you are indeed watching a John Wick movie, and then generic action ensues. A bunch of people just getting punched and kicked, and choosing to use melee weapons like axes, which are bigger and more cumbersome than pistols, so it doesn't make sense that they would make room on their person to carry stuff like that, but whatever. Eventually, Dad is subdued, which is always funny when all previous soldiers showed no regard for capturing him alive, but he's brought before the main baddie, the Chancellor, for the table-setting monologue, which makes absolutely no sense. So Chancellor goes on to explain that Dad is an outsider who is allowed to marry into their clan. Then, because he ran away with his daughter, they killed his wife to punish him. Which, presumably, if he was an outsider that married in, that means that his wife was an insider in this scenario? So presumably one of their own, yet they killed her to punish him. Okay, that's fine. Stop thinking about it. Don't think about it too long. The Chancellor believes unquestionably in fate, that life truly has no choices, and to prove his point, he gives Dad a gun and mockingly suggests him to make a choice between killing himself or killing the Chancellor. And this is the part where in the movie theater, I slumped down into my seat and realized, fuck, this isn't gonna be a good one either. I know the movie doesn't want me to think about it, but let's take a sec to think about it. Chancellor believes fate has dictated him arriving here and successfully killing Dad and kidnapping Eve, even in the context of providing Dad a gun and playfully suggesting he shoot him. Ha 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 ha, he thinks. I understand fate, and I know you were actually gonna shoot yourself and not me. But why? From Dad's point of view, why would he ever kill himself in this scenario over killing the Chancellor? If he's dead to rights and you're going to take his daughter regardless, why wouldn't he kill you as the final act? Why would you calculate that fate has put him on this path of killing himself? Stop it. Stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about the movie. Anyways, faithfully for Dad, Eve is fated to cry out, or she makes a choice to cry out, and so Dad's fate changes to a third choice, which fate makes him choose, and he starts shooting everyone, and the Chancellor just walks away when he's clearly there to get Eve, because he's fated to be a dumbass? Like, I would say I'm confused, but this is just classic retarded writing on brand for John Wick movies. At least in keeping with that tradition, they've let me know 8 minutes in I don't have to pay attention to the story at all. Yay! My favorite kind of movie, where I don't have to pay attention and nothing matters and I don't get to care about anything. Bro, stop thinking about the movie. Just fucking watch it. Just put your face in your bucket of popcorn and shut the fuck up and watch. No! I'm gonna think about it. You know why? Because there's plenty of parts in all of these movies that beg for you to take what they're doing deadly seriously. Later, when we flash forward to Eve as an adult, she's doing ballerina training and we can see she's pushing herself so hard that she's bleeding through her slippers and onto the stage, implying some kind of weight to her dedication and character. Details like this just make me more frustrated. I don't get why these movies choose to oscillate so wildly between the paper-thin plot hinged on idiotic villains and the overbearing edginess and grit for the main characters. It's incredibly hard for my brain to reconcile those two things, and I don't get why you can and choose to do it for one but not the other. Why are the bad guys such idiot clowns who constantly seize defeat from the jaws of victory? The movie also clearly wants you to think it's going to explore this serious theme of fate versus choice throughout, but it's never really meaningfully reinforced or acknowledged again. But before you know it, the movie has moved on. Winston shows up and exposits to Eve using vocabulary I find hard to believe a greeting 6-year-old can comprehend. The scene conveniently ignores the details of where she's at, how she got there, how Winston knows any of this, how the Chancellor didn't capture her alone on a marina with no boats. Dumb! Anyway, he says she has some extended family and takes her to them. Of course, it's the Ruska Roma, which is a family, not a cult, unlike the Chancellor's cult, which is definitely a cult. So they waste no time feeding her some cult bullshit about the Kikimara because, we gotta get them while they're young and vulnerable. That's definitely not grooming or culty at all. So the child consents, and that's that. Another member initiated at the age of 6 into our cult. Family. Then we flash forward to a training section where the movie briefly flirts with the idea of Eve having a style distinct from John Wick's because she's a woman, but then she actually meets John Wick and talks to him long enough to absorb his powers and fighting style anyways, which now canonically causes his death in the 4th movie. There's also a pretty interesting scene that you'll miss if you blink where Eve has to pass a test that involves killing another Ruska Roma agent whose last words are, "I'm you in 10 years," but she shows no conflict over it and neither does the movie, so moving on. So now that all that boring story stuff is out of the way, it's basically non-stop action scenes from here till the end credits. Eve recognizes a scar on one of the guys she kills, which puts her on the trail of the cult that killed her dad, and from here we're in comfy, cozy John Wick territory where Eve jet sets from location to location, killing people in ways we've seen a million times before. Norman Reedus appears for about 30 seconds in this movie, so we can introduce a plot-irrelevant child before we get the classic scene of his bounty being increased and a couple people arbitrarily decide, finally, that's a number worth dying for, and so, on continental grounds, they all make their way to his room where they are quickly killed by Eve. Eve and Reedus team up to escape until they're split up outside where the child is abducted by the cult, and even though Reedus is disarmed and unconscious on the ground with a $4 million bounty on his head, they let him live because, well, he's got to hug his kid at the end of the movie. The cult also stupidly doesn't kill Eve, so she goes to get some new guns, and then the cult realizes, fuck, we should have killed her. So there's an ambush, and they fight again. She kills everyone, she gets some directions, and there's like 4 more identical fights until she's captured. She's restrained and unarmed, seemingly dead to rights, but the script says she escapes, so she does. She meets her sister briefly, who then dies. John Wick shows up, and they fight. She convinces him to let her kill the counselor, he agrees, and then she fights for another 30 minutes till she kills him. She returns the child, goes to a ballet, then becomes the target of a $5 million bounty, leaves the venue, and that's it. That's the movie. And John Wick, Chapter 5 or whatever, joins the increasingly long list of movies that I've broken the sound barrier with how fast I've gotten out of my seat to leave the theater. I think the biggest contributing factor to my fatigue of these movies is the complete lack of tension and suspense in any of the action, which might not seem like a big deal to you, but this movie is impressively about 75% action, and I couldn't find a reason to care what was happening beyond action for action's sake. When you boil it down, this movie is nothing more than gun porn. Eve effortlessly kills everyone in her path without ever seeming to be in any real danger or suffering from any disadvantages or problems that she has to cleverly orchestrate her way out of. Sure, she takes damage from time to time, but it never impedes her or affects the direction of the scene. Every obstacle in her way she predictably answers with a gun, and that's the whole movie for 2 hours, and the lack of real creativity leaves me exhausted. Sometimes she uses ice skates, a sword, or grenades instead of a gun, but beyond the novelty of it being a different thing, the result is the same. She swings it or shoots it at the bad guys and they fall over and she's fine. John Wick is also guilty of these same sins in his later movies, so it's not even exclusively a problem with Eve. This franchise is just played out and has nothing new to show us beyond a few cool camera angles, and in this movie's case, a scene with 2 flamethrowers that's mostly spoiled in the trailers, but even that becomes boring after the novelty wears off after about 30 seconds. It just devolves into, I peek out and flamethrower while you hide, you peek out and flamethrower while I hide. That's it, besides the instances where she's in no danger at all and guys just trickle in small numbers to get lit on fire. The world building has also given up on trying to be interesting. Things that used to be intriguing have devolved into tired tropes. Rockabilly old ladies using century-old technology is never explained or explored beyond being a stupid aesthetic. The mysterious world of organized assassins is undermined further with every installment as new rules are repeatedly introduced, broken, and contradicted in the same movie. Even the scene where Eve has to kill that senior Ruska Roma agent is completely ignored, leaving an opportunity on the table to more deeply explore the differences between these various assassin syndicates, or even what it might mean to Eve personally. A better movie might explore her feelings and show conflict over what her future might be if she remains a Ruska Roma. But no, that might take away runtime we could be filling with samey, uninspired action, so moving on. I used to think this movie's world was a rich tapestry worth exploring, but it's become more odd and disappointing than shag carpet in the guest bathroom. The characters aren't any better, often shallow or making no sense at all, especially the villains. Eve is nothing more than a vengeful woman with good aim, and the Chancellor joins the long line of clowns that are as disposable as they are forgettable. Even John and Winston have remained static through 5 movies. There's just nothing for me to sink my teeth into. The only thing left is mindless action, and it's exactly that, mindless. Because the action lacks tension or stakes beyond robbing you of your time. It's impossible to be invested beyond the visual splendor of the admittedly top-notch aesthetics, but that's it. They've also stopped innovating ways to choreograph action scenes. Wick 2 and 3 have a few distinct set pieces to their name that give them a bit of unique flavor, but Ballerina has nothing as strong. Although I will say I did like the sound design of the shootout at the hunting lodge. Since the building was mostly made of lumber, there were some distinct sounds of wood splintering from gunshots I enjoyed, which we don't normally hear. I did also like when she blew that guy up behind the door and it made an entrance for her to the next room. That was fun. But moments like that are so few throughout the entire film, and it was also spoiled in the trailer, which I didn't watch till I made this video. So if you did, then the marketing robbed you of that one decent shot of the entire film and gave you little substance in return for coming to see the 5th movie. Look, I'm under no illusions that this movie is a faithful entry in the Wick series and that it will probably be a crowd pleaser enjoyed by most, but I've reached my breaking point with this series. I'm tired, boss. I'm tired of seeing people dance while people are firing guns 5 feet away. I'm tired of all the dumb names and appointments people hold only for them to have no meaningful influence on the fate of the protagonist. High Table, Adjudicator, Elder, Marquis, Harbinger, Chancellor. There used to be some mystique and intrigue behind how all these things coexisted and operated, but each has been revealed to be hollow, meaningless, and effortlessly disassembled by one man. Mostly I'm tired of bulletproof suits, people falling 30 stories and getting kicked down endless stairs. Explosions happening literally 6 inches away from people's faces with no repercussions. Followed up by getting hit with 6 cars in a row. This might as well be an anime or a video game for how much plot armor these characters have and how much damage they can sustain without having any bearing on the success of their vengeance. There's just nothing interesting on offer anymore besides some unique muzzle flashes and the choice set dressing for each action scene. This movie also has so much action in it that it's hard to remember when it does occasionally succeed at being distinct. There's a cute scene where Eve's gun gets covered in plates and she's smashing them on this other lady, but I totally forgot it until I went to collect clips for this video because it just gets lost in the morass. Maybe I'm at fault for wanting more from these movies. Admittedly, the first one being so subdued comparatively gave me the false impression we could have cool action with a passable plot and some fun world building sprinkled in. But Wick 4 and now Ballerina feels like they'll never rein it back in. Ballerina was so bloated with action that I struggle to remember any of it. I even forgot when the big tough guy lit his foot on fire, which was a stupid tactic, but admittedly something new. It feels like John Wick has lost its identity and is now in that territory of content. Just fill it with as much mundane action as possible and push it out to theaters. It's only been 2 years since Chapter 4, and we know they're looking to bring him back for a 5th, which I hope is called Lobotomy, because that's what you're going to need after you see it. The release cadence for these movies is too fast for them to be special anymore. Awful plot, awful villains, and the action is now filler to compensate. So I'm done with John Wick. After 4 and now this, these movies just make me disappointed and fatigued. If you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole thing. I had a lot more fun making this than I expected, and I hope it was fun for you too. I love to make funny entertainment, so if my style of humor resonates with you, please take a little bit more time to visit my channel where you can learn more about my content creation values and goals. I also have a Discord if you'd like to say hi, give feedback, or chat about new ideas. Link is in the description. If you think this will make someone you know smile or laugh, please share it around. Thanks again.